Hi, and welcome to lesson number 4. I'm Antonio Calanducci from INFN Catania and from the University of Catania. This lesson is divided in two parts. In the first part, we cover the techniques, the tools, and the framework to develop user interface in Portlets. The second part instead will cover a practical session where we'll dive in some live coding session where we will build a portlet from scratch. So let's take a look to the options that we have to develop portlet. In the previous lecture, we have seen how to use generic portlets and the Liferay MVC framework to build a portlet. These are not the only options. Actually, if you are coming from previous experience with other frameworks like Springs, Struts, or Java Server Phases, you can actually build portlets with that frameworks too. One more options that we have is the portlet based on Vaadin. Vaadin is an open source framework based on the Google Web Toolkit, and that is useful to develop user interface in code. So if you are coming from a desktop development experience, you probably you find quite at home using Vaadin. If you use the Liferay IDE, when you create a new plugin project, you have the three options showed in the slide. So you can develop your portlet using the Liferay MVC framework, the JSF framework, or the Vaadin framework. For this course, however, we will focus on the Liferay MVC framework, as already seen in the previous lecture. Let's dive in now a little bit more on user interface. This topic in particular covers the techniques for developing the front end for your app. So the first option you have is use the standard HTML5, CSS, JavaScript that you probably already know to build your interface. But maybe you can enrich this HTML tagging with CSS frameworks like Bootstrap, Foundation, and so on. The third option that we have is to use a JavaScript framework like XJS, Smart Client, CooksDo, Spruce Core, and so on. They are very nice because they make use of JavaScript only, and they generate HTML and CSS behind the scene, so avoiding the developer to deal with tags and so on. Finally, Liferay itself provides some tools for user interface development. In particular, you have the Liferay Taglibs and AUI UI JavaScript. So let's take a look to what options do we have to develop user interface for our portlets. The first option is to use plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if you already have some web development skills, you can use them to create your user interface. You can also enrich your HTML with CSS frameworks like the famous one, Bootstrap, Foundation, and so on. If you are not so fluent with the markup language, you can use JavaScript. JavaScript provides some frameworks like XJS, Smart Client, and so on that avoid the usage of HTML and CSS, so you can describe and you can build the user interface with the JavaScript components. The last option is to use what Liferay provides to the developers, Liferay Taglibs and AUI UI JavaScript framework. Let's take a look to both of them in more detail. The first of the two libraries is the Liferay tag libraries. You can enrich your Java server page with two like taglibs in particular, AUI and Liferay UI. What are the benefits of the taglibs? Taglibs generate for you HTML, CSS, JavaScript during the rendering phase of the portlet. The other advantage is that you don't think to take care of the look and feel, because you are going to use the look and feel of the current theme, and this means that your portlet will be very consistent with all the other Liferay out-of-the-box portlet. And in case there will be some upgrade in your Liferay software, your portlet will look fresh and modern. For example, in the recent version of Liferay 6.2, AUI UI make usage of Bootstrap, so your portlets, without changing any line of code, make use of it. AUI UI instead is a JavaScript framework. It's based on the famous Yahoo user interface library. It provides several widgets that can be used out of the box, like tabs, menus, data tables, sliders, calendar, and so on. It's actually a JavaScript library, and it can be used also outside of Liferay. You can use any other web project if you like. However, AUI UI can be used in two ways. It can be used directly in JavaScript, writing AUI UI code into the script tags, or to simplify life to programmers, Liferay provide AUI Taglib that use behind the scene the JavaScript version of AUI UI. In this slide, you have an example of the AUI tag library. We are building a simple form with the input field and with a select option and a button using this tag. And as you can see, and you will see also in the hands-on part, you can also use regular HTML attributes, because at the end of the day, the Taglib generates HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So all the extra attributes that you add will hand to the final markup. The second Taglib is called Liferay UI. These are a set of more complex user interface components that are used throughout the Liferay portal. Some examples are the search container, the CAPTCHA, writing, progress, and so on. They actually have also some server-side functionality, while the Taglib that we have seen previously works mainly on the client side. Here you can see an example. The search container, it's able to create a very nice data table that provides model data binding, and it offers out-of-the-box navigation and pagination without writing any line of code. One more feature that we have with AUI library is a powerful and easy-to-use validation system for form fields. We have actually 16 more or less validation rules that can be applied very easily, adding one of those tags in the field of your form. We will see this in practice during the live code session. Liferay offers a way to handle different language for your portlet. It's quite easy to implement translation for in different language for labels and values. You just need to create several language_xx.properties file, where each xx is a country code, where you set a list of key value pairs, and you can translate all the values in different language. Then you just need to give the proper name to the input fields that you want to translate, and Liferay automatically will use the right translation for the field coming from the properties files. Okay, let's start with the hands-on. The idea is to build a complete portlet for job management that will able to create, read, update, and delete job. This example allow us to show you some of the topics that we covered in the previous lesson and this lecture, like the Liferay MVC framework, the usage of the Taglib, the form validation, and the internationalization. In this slide, you can take a look to the final outputs of the portlet that we are going to create. So here we have input field, a text area, we have calendar field, and the search container from where you can edit or delete jobs that are added through this form. And finally, some reference where you can get the official documentation for the Taglib of Liferay and AUI UI, and some documentation coming from the community. So that's all for now. Let's see during the hands-on part. Bye!